Check 1, 2, 3, check. Check 1, 2. Can everybody on Zoom hear me? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me on Zoom? Excellent. Oh, you have 4.
Good Shabbos, Temple Best Shalom. It's Friday the 13th in 2020. What could go wrong? We're going to begin our services on page 10. It's wonderful to see you, whether you're here in person, whether you're on Zoom. The important thing is that we remain a community. We sing together and we welcome in Shabbat together. Page 10, Yedid Nefesh.
Yedid Nefesh, Avorachaman, Mishoch Avdak, Eretzonach, Yarutz Avdak, Kemo Aya, Yishtachaveh Muladarak, Ki Eravo Yedidutach, Minofet Suf Vechotam, Igalena Ufros Aviv Alai, Et Sukkot Shelomach, Ta'ir Eretz Mikvodach, Nagila Venismecha Bach, Ma'erahum Kiva Moed Vehoneni Ki Me'olam.
Lehu Neranena is on page 11.
Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena Adonai. Nariya, Nariya, Letsuri Shenu, Nikadma Fana Betoda. Nariya, Nariya, Letsuri Shenu, Bizmiro Nariya Lo, Lekuneranena, 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 Dronaya, Lekuneranena, 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 Ladonai.
Yismechu Hashamayim, page 14.
Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, B'tagel haaretz. Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, B'tagel haaretz. Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, umelo. Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, umelo. Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, B'tagel haaretz. Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, umelo. Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, Yehiram hayam, umelo.
We continue together, page 20, Romemu.
Nai, nai, nai. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 nai 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 yai dai dai yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu le'har kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu le'har kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu le'har kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu le'har kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu.
I ask that if you're able to do so, please rise as we pray together Mizmor LeDavid, which can be found on page 21.
Mizmor LeDavid, Habu Adonai b'nei Elim, Habu Adonai, Kavon va'oz, ay, Habu Adonai, Shemo ishtachavu l'Adonai b'hadrat kodesh kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod hirim Adonai al mayim rabim kol Adonai b'koach kol Adonai Shomer arazim v'yashav וידבר אדוני אל ארצי הבנון ויקידם כמו עגל לבנון וציון כמו בן רמימה כמו בן רמימה איי 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 כל אדוני כותן לבודש כל אדוני יקיל מדבר יקיל אדוני מדבר קדש כל אדוני יולה יעלות ויכסוף יערות ובחלו כולו מרכבות איי 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 אדוני למה בו ישב וישב אדוני מלך לעולם אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום ניי 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 יאי ניי 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 Nai 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 ai 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 nai 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 ya ba 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 ya da da ya ba ya ba 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 ya nai 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 ya da 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 ya nai 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 nai.
Please be seated. We continue together with Anna Bakoach, page 22. Adonai, if you would, may your mighty right hand undo the knot that ties us up. Accept the prayers of your people. You who are revered, raise us up and cleanse us.
Ana bechoach, bechoach, gedulat yemincha, yemincha. Tatet serura kaperinatамcha sagvenu tarenu nora ana bechoach bechoach gedulat yemincha yemincha Tatet serura kaperinatамcha sagvenu tarenu nora Ana bekoach gedulat yemincha Tatet serura kaperinatамcha sagvenu tarenu nora Na gibor dorshe Yehudcha kevavat shomrem barchem tarem rachamem sidkatecha tamid gomlem Hana bekoach gedulat yemincha Tatet serura kaberinatамcha sagvenu tarenu nora Nai 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 nai.
Tradition tells us we're to greet Shabbat as if we're seeing a beautiful bride on her wedding day. Lecha Dodi, page 23.
Nai 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 nai. Nai 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 nai. Nai 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 nai. Nai 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 nai. Nai 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 nai. Lechadodi eligrakala Pene Shabbat nekabela Lechadodi eligrakala Pene Shabbat nekabela Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad Hishmianu El hamiuchad Adonai echad Ushemo echad L'shemu tiferet Ve'elitila lechadori aligrakala Pene Shabbat nekabela Ligrat Shabbat lechu v'necha ki mekor Haberacha merosh mikedem Nesucha sof ma'aseya B'machshavat tchila Lechadori aligrakala Pene Shabbat nekabela Mikdash Melech Ir Melucha Kumetziya Mitocha Fekarav Lachshevet Veyemeka Becha Vechu Yachamol Alaikem La Lechadori Eligrakala Pene Shabbat nekabela Hinari Ve'afar Kumi Livshi Bigdea Tifartecha Mi Aliyad Ben Yishai Ben Chalak Mi Karva El Nafshi Geala Lechadori Ligrakala Pene Shabbat nekabela Hitoreri Kiva Orech Kumi Uri Shir Daberi Gevod Adonai Lahik Nikla Lechadodi Eligrakala Pene Shabbat nekabela Lo tevoshia, velotika mi matish tochachia, umateke mi bakekesu, anie ami veni neta. Iratila lechadori aligrakala Pene Shabbat nekabela V'hayu l'shimsa Shosaik v'rachaku kol Mevalaik yasisalaik Elochaich kimschos chatan akala Lechadori aligrakala Pene Shabbat nekabela Yaminu smol tifrotzi ve'et Adonai Taritzi aliyadish Ben apatzi ve'nismecha ve'nagila Lechadodia ligrakala Pene Shabbat kabela Boi v'shalom Haterepala gam besimcha Uvetzola toch emunei Am segula boi hala lechadoria ligrakala Pene Shabbat nekabela lechadoria ligrakala Pene Shabbat nekabela.
Please be seated. We continue together on page 27, Mizmor Shir Le'yom HaShabbat.
Mizmor shir le'yom HaShabbat. Mizmor shir le'yom HaShabbat. Tov tov lehodol Adonai, Tov tov lehodol Adonai, ולזמר לשמחה עליון טוב, טוב להודות לאדוני, טוב, טוב להודות לאדוני, טוב, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמחה עליון טוב, טוב להודות לאדוני, להגיד בבוקר הצדקך, להגיד בבוקר הצדקך, באמונתך בלילות, באמונתך בלילות, טוב טוב להודות לאדוני, להגיד בבוקר הצדקך, להגיד בבוקר הצדקך, באמונתך בלילות, באמונתך בלילות, טוב טוב להודות לאדוני, טוב טוב להודות לאדוני, טוב טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמחה עליון טוב, טוב להודות לאדוני.
Adonai Malach, page 29.
Adonai malach geut lavish, lavish, Adonai ozit azar, Avtikon tevel baltimot, Avtikon tevel baltimot, Nachon chisacha meaz, me'olam ata, Nasehu neharot Adonai, Nasehu neharot kolam, Yisehu neharot okyam, Mikolot ma'im rabim, Adirim mishpereyam, Adir bamarom Adonai, Adir bamarom Adonai, Erotecha nemnu meod, Leveitcha navakodesh, Adonai lehorech yamim, Adonai lehorech yamim, mikolot ma'im rabim, adirim mishpereyam, adir bamarom Adonai, adir bamarom Adonai.
We heed the call to worship together with the Baruch Hu. Please rise as we turn to page 39b.
Nai nai na 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 nai 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 na 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 nai nai ya da nai 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 ya da nai na 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 nai 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 na 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 nai 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 na 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 nai nai ya da nai 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 ya da nai nai na na nai. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed. Na 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 na. Nai nai na 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 nai 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 na 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 nai nai ya na nai 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 ya na nai na 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 nai 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 na 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 nai 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 na 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 nai nai ya na nai 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 ya na nai nai ya na nai. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uvein laila, Adonai Tzivaot Shemo, Adonai Tzivaot Shemo. El Chai V'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Hamariv Aravi.
Ahavat Olam, page 40.
Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Avta Torah u'mitzvot ugim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Al ken Adonai Eloheinu B'shokveinu uv'kumeinu Nasiach bechukecha V'nismag b'divrei Toratecha U'v'mitzvotecha Le'olam va'ed Ki hem chayenu be'orek yameinu Be'orek yameinu Uvahem leke yomam v'layla Ve'ahavatecha al tatzimenu le'olamim Baruch ata Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוקבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך Adonai Elohechem emet.
We continue on page 44, Micha Mocha, who is like you, Adonai.
Nai 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 Adonai nai 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 nai. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, norat tehilot osefele, norat tehilot osefele. Malchutecha ra'uvanecha, pokei hayam lifnei Moshe, ze Elianu ve'amru, ze Elianu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Nai 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 nai
Hashkivenu, page 45.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom Vehamitenu Malkeinu Lechaim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom Vehamitenu Malkeinu Lechaim Ushmor Tzeiteinu Uvoeinu Lechaim Shalom Me'ata ve'ad olam Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom Vehamitenu Malkeinu Lechaim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom Vehamitenu Malkeinu Lechaim
Adonai, shelter us in the shadow of your wings. For you are our God. Please watch over us and deliver us. And you, God, are sovereign, merciful, and compassionate. Please ensure our going and our coming for life and peace now and forever. May you spread over us your canopy of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, who spreads the canopy of peace over us, over all the people Israel, over Las Vegas and over Jerusalem.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom Vehamitenu Malkeinu Lechaim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom Vehamitenu Malkeinu Lechaim.
We rise and turn to page 46 as we sanctify Shabbat together. Vishamru.
Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורות המרית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות המרית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות המרית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות המרית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות המרית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות המרית עולם.
Hatzikadesh.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קידושי ועמליק מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, Bagala, bagala, uvisman kari vemeru. Amen. Yesh me rabba mevarach, le'alam ulal me'almaya.
Yitbarach.
Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitma v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, Shem melech v'desha b'richu. Leila min kol berkata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma, v'yimeru. Amen.
The Amidah for Friday night begins on page 47. This is a silent prayer. Please use the words of the Siddur or the private meditations of your heart. For those of you still praying your Amidah, please continue to do so. The rest of us may be seated. We'll continue together, page 51, Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata umelech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata umelech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Tov beinecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam.
We make peace together. Oseh Shalom, middle of page 52.
Oseh Shalom b'maromav uyaseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh Shalom b'maromav uyaseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh Shalom b'maromav uyaseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh Shalom b'maromav uyaseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh Shalom b'maromav uyaseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh Shalom b'maromav uyaseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen.
Kaddish Shalem is on page 54.
Yitkaral v'yigrashem me'raba
Amen.
ve'almad divurak yirutei ve'amlik lakutei b'chayecholi v'mechonu v'chaydo beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kari ve'meru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevarach le'alam olal me'al maya Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitba'ar v'yirma v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shemei kudusha Urechu le'ela min kol brakata v'shirata tushbekata v'nekamata miram be'ama v'miru amen. Titkabal tzlot tehonu v'utehonu kol Yisrael kol dava v'honu shemaya v'miru amen. Yehi shalom amin shemaya v'chaim alinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'miru amen. Oseh Shalom b'maromav uyaseh Shalom aleinu ve'al Yisrael ve'imeru Amen.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. As I mentioned, it's wonderful to see you, whether in person, whether via Zoom. It's wonderful to be in community. It's wonderful to celebrate Shabbat after yet another week in 2020. But we're here, and I'm glad to celebrate Shabbat and rest a little bit. One of the things I love about Simple Beth Shalom is teaching the same Torah Parsha to different groups here at our synagogue. It's really fascinating teaching the little kids a story or an idea from the Parsha, and then teaching the teenagers the same thing, and then teaching the adult education class the same thing, because all three groups usually have three radically different responses. But sometimes, occasionally, all of these groups will respond in a similar way, which is also a really cool effect. So the other day, I'm teaching our Torah portion, Chaye Sarah. I'm teaching it to the kids in our religious school on Monday afternoon. And I'm telling them the story about Abraham's servant and how he was told to go and find a wife for Isaac. So as we know, according to the story, he travels to a foreign town and he's waiting at the well. And of course, Rebekah approaches him and she offers him water, and then she even waters his camels. This is a very powerful story, and it creates a powerful image of how to interact with people and how to do acts of chesed, loving kindness. But I think the next part of the story, which is really interesting, but almost oftentimes gets overlooked. It's when Abraham's servant goes to Rebekah's family's house. He recounts to them the story of how Rebekah was kind to him at the well. And he says that he wants her to return with him in order that she will marry Isaac, a man that she has never met before. Now, in the ancient world, we know that girls were married off to men all the time. That was the custom. It would have not been unlikely that a girl like Rebekah would have been married off to a distant relative, probably from her own tribe. And usually the matter would have been settled by the men of her family. It would have been a done deal. However, our Torah, our sacred text, does something very interesting here. The story tells us that the male members of Rebekah's family ask her for her input into the situation. If we look in chapter 24, verse 58, it says, they called to Rebekah, these are her male members of the family, and they say to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will. Now, when I told this story and I read this verse to the children in the religious school the other night, there was some hesitation on the end of the kids when Rebekah willingly decided to go off and marry basically a complete stranger. The idea of a young woman leaving everything she knows behind to go with a man she just barely met to marry another man she knows almost nothing about, this was too much for our kids. So they began to argue amongst themselves, and I remember one of the children said to another, why would she just up and leave? That's crazy. And the other child responded, she had to do it. It was her duty. And I think there is a lot of beauty and wisdom in that response. If we look at the Hebrew of the verse that I just read to you, when her family asks, will you go with this man? Rebekah doesn't really respond with, I will. She replies with the Hebrew word elech, which literally means I will walk or I will go. This is a derivative of the Hebrew word halach, which means to walk. The word for Jewish law, halacha, is also based on this word, because the idea of halakha is that when we serve God through mitzvot, we are metaphorically walking righteously with God. So of the many definitions that a religious Jew can find for the word halach, to serve can be one of them. And I really like this definition because when they ask Rebecca, will you go with this man? She responds very powerfully with the answer, I will serve. And I think that's exactly the idea that the young student was channeling the other night when she said she had to do it. It was her duty. Now, on a completely different note, I want to talk about a figure from history whom you may or may not have heard of. He was a German medieval knight named John of Bohemia, later nicknamed John the Blind, because this knight had lost his eyesight completely when he was only 39 years old. Now, although blind, John remained a powerful war general and tactician. He would sit on his horse above the battlefield and have his advisors describe to him the battle that was going on beneath him. And after winning many battles this way, he envisioned them all in his head, he soon became feared amongst the many rivals he faced. He became a prominent figure in the 100 Years' War when England fought France. John was king of Bohemia, but loyal to the French crown, so much so that his motto, which he had embroidered on his banner and likewise on his armor, read in German, Ich dien, meaning I serve. In 1346, when Philip of France asked for help from nobles from all over Europe to help defend the French monarchy, John the Blind answered the call at age 50, thus living up to his motto, I serve. John led an army of 12,000 men, many of whom were mounted knights. He led them against the English army, who had arrived in the French town of Crécy near Paris. Now, seeing as how the French outnumbered the English 2-1 and how the French forces consisted, like I said, of mounted knights on horseback, John thought he could easily overtake the English army of peasants and farmers armed with only arrows and simple chainmail. However, historians estimate that the 6,000 English archers could shoot about 12 arrows per minute. That means that about 72,000 arrows rained down on the French army every minute. Now, additionally, according to history, this is the first known battle that the English introduced a new fabled weapon known as the cannon. This could pummel enemy forces with gunpowder and cannonballs, essentially making a mounted knight on horseback a very easy target. Needless to say, John the Blind's army did not fare so well against the English army at Crécy, but John would always live up to his motto of I serve. So at the height of bloodshed during the battle, although blind, he asked that his men lead him into the thickest amount of hand-to-hand combat, where he fought blindly and courageously against the enemy until he was ultimately killed. When the battle was over, King Edward of England walked amongst the battlefield looking at all the French corpses, surveying all the various noblemen who had died. And when he came upon the body of John the Blind, he instantly recognized him due to the crest on his helmet and his family's coat of arms and his motto, Ich dien, embroidered on his armor. And it is said that when King Edward saw the body of John, he immediately cried and knelt before the body. He is later quoted as saying, "Here fell the flower of European chivalry, but the most valiant of all of them was John. After the battle, King Edward took John's helmet and his banner as war trophies and hung them prominently in his castle, and he later paid tribute to his enemy by adopting the 3 white ostrich feathers of John's crest. He later put all of these on the British 2-pence coin, which can still be found on modern-day British currency, the words, "Ich dien," I serve. The figure of John the Blind became synonymous with gallantry, chivalry, and blind loyalty, even until death. How many of us are willing to follow Rebecca and John's example? How many of us are willing to step up when times are difficult and say, "I serve"? It's certainly easy to pledge loyalty to something or to someone when times are easy, but when things are rocky or uncertain, it's much more difficult to be willing to say, "I serve." I'm constantly amazed at our synagogue's willingness to serve, not only each other, but when we serve the entire community. During the high holidays, we asked many of you to contribute food to the JFSA food bank, and you responded by donating pounds and pounds and pounds of food. We've asked you to keep each other safe by wearing facial coverings inside our building, socially distancing from each other, and you responded by doing just that. When we had to reinvent programming to adhere to COVID guidelines, some of you shook a lulav or even recited an aliyah to the Torah from your car. Each and every time we've asked you to do something, you've all responded by saying, "I serve." Unfortunately, the difficult times are probably far from over, but every time we come together, whether in person, whether via Zoom, whether in our sanctuary or our parking lot, every time our community celebrates, I feel as if we are saying to God and to each other, "I serve." And as a rabbi, there is no prouder thing that I can do than to serve all of you. The community that serves one another. Shabbat Shalom. Our tradition teaches us that on Friday nights, wherever we are all over the world, angels come to greet us and visit us for Shabbat. On page 73, we'll sing Shalom Aleichem. I ask that if you're able to do so, please stand as we greet our Shabbat angels.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu ani l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malachei Hamlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeitkem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
We remain standing for Kiddush, which is on page 76.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pori hagafen Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon, hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh bereshit, ki hu yom tehila lamikra'e kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim, Kivanu v'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. It's normal power.
There you go.
Not round power.
We remain standing for Aleinu, which can be found on page 56.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'atei gedula le'otzeh bereshit, shelo asanu koyei haratzot, ve'lo samanu k'mishpechot hadama, shelo sam chelkenu kachem, ve'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech malechei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu notei shamayim ve'yoser haaretz, u'Moshe v'ikaram b'shamayim imal, u'shchinat uzo, b'govei meromim, Hu Eloheinu ein od, Emed malkeinu eved zulato, Kakatu v'torato, ve'adata hayom ve'hashevota, el levavecha, ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim, b'shamayim imal, ve'al haaretz, mitachat ein od al ken negev l'cha Eloheinu yom uzecha. Ki malchut shelcha hi, lo menamtim lok bekavod, kakatu b'toratecha, Adonai imlok leolam va'ed, v'nemar, v'haya Adonai, lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
Please be seated. We have an opportunity to say a prayer of healing for those not only in our community but all over the world. Physical healing or mental healing, even spiritual healing. Page 173, Misha Berach.
Misheberach Avotenu Mikor habracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Simple Best Shalom is acknowledging the yortzites of Marcel Azule, Sony Bazbaz, John Beltzer, Abraham Bloom, Yeti Dinker, Zadik Eshkenazi, Ralph Gabai, Israel Gertler, Sylvia Goot, David A. Greenfield, George Hill, Dolly Howard, Ann Cash, Albert Lederer, David Migdal, Ethel Miller, Eugene Monkarsh, Jay Nasser, Isidore Oberman, Celia Reinglass, Morris Reisman, Leonard Rosenstein, Rose Ross, Pinchas Solomon, Sophie Scholl, Norman Stahl, Arthur Staritz, Stephanie Weiss, and Julie Weiner. We're also acknowledging the Shloshim of Dr. Stanton Carroll. Mourners and those observing a yortzeit have an opportunity to say the Mourner's Kaddish, which can be found on page 58. If you have a need or desire to say this prayer, I ask that you rise now. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divara kirutei v'yamlik malkutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye de kol beit Yisrael, ba'agala ubizman kariv b'imru, amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam olmei almaya. Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei de kudisha b'richu le'ila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran be'elma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav huya aseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Please be seated. We now have an opportunity to hear some announcements from our synagogue president, Jared Finkelstein.
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to those of you here in the sanctuary as well as our online community. It's wonderful to see everyone. We can do this again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. You can join us either in person or again online during the week, morning minyan at 7:30 a.m. On weekdays at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, also here in person or online. A lot going on these days. There was a delivery today of all the candy collected as part of the candy drive that was brought to Ronald McDonald House, and I guess there was a lot of candy. A lot of candy, and they were very happy to get it, so thank you for everyone who participated in that. The ECC is accepting donations of gift cards for their Thanksgiving food drive, supporting JFSA. So starting this coming Monday and continuing through Wednesday, there will be also holding a Scholastic Book Fair here. So again, if you can bring in gift cards for turkeys and things like that, the community is in such need, and I know everyone has answered the call for both, the high holiday food drive, for the candy drive, but the need is still there, so please be as generous as possible. Adult education is up and running. Online, we have Radical Torah on Monday at 12, and on Thursday at 4 p.m. Is History of Zionism with Rabbi Goodman. Also, Rabbi Hodson will be teaching Intro to Judaism here at TBS on Thursday at 7 p.m. If you're interested in a conversion as part of that class, you must meet with Rabbi Hodson before enrolling. Also, youth activities. Upcoming on Monday, November 22nd at 1:30 p.m., there's going to be a Kadima virtual dance party for grades 4 through 7. So RSVP to DJs, you can get the links and everything else. Again, we also have Underground Las Vegas, which is on the third Monday and fourth Sunday of the month at 4. That's where students discuss relevant topics and then participate in a mentor-led field trip around Las Vegas. So contact Rabbi Hodson about that. You can still enroll in the Early Childhood Center. They are doing an amazing job, and they're looking at opening additional classrooms. So if you're interested in having a child enrolled, in preschool, please contact the office there. It's also not too late to enroll in the religious school, which is both in person or via Zoom. We can catch you up on anything that you've missed up to this point. Contact Rabbi Hodson if you're interested in that. Also, if you know of a temple member who's in the hospital, ill at home, or in a nursing home, please contact the temple office to let us know. Shabbat Shalom.
Adon Olam can be found on page 211.
Adon Olam, Hashem Alach, B'terem kol hitzir nivra, Leid nasa, V'hefso kol azay melech, Shemo nikra, Be'acharei gilot hakol, Levado imloch nora, Behu haya, Behu hoveh, Behu hiye b'tifara, Behu echad, Ve'en sheni necham shelo le'akbira, B'li reshit, B'li tagnit, B'lo ha'oz, V'ha'misra, Behu eli, B'chai go'ali, B'tzur chevli, B'heitzara, Behu nisi umanos li, Menakosi be'yom ekra, Be'ado avkid ruchi, Me'etishan be'aira,
Please rise.
Be'im ruchi gviati, Adonai li, V'lo yirod, Nai nai nai, Nai nai nai, Nai nai nai, Nai 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 nai, Nai nai nai, Nai nai nai, Nai nai nai, Nai nai nai.
The way we end Friday night services at Temple Beth Shalom is, of course, to send blessings to one another. So whether you're here in the sanctuary, whether you're at home, whether you're wherever you are throughout the United States, I know some of you are out of state, we're sending love and blessings to you. Hopefully you can send them back to us. Yivarechecha.
Yevarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yikunecha, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yaseh lecha shalom. Nai 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 yai nai 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 yai nai 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 Shalom.
Adonai oz le'emo yutein, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom.
Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam, salam shalom. Salam aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam, salam shalom. Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Odivo Shalom Aleinu, Odivo Shalom Aleinu, Odivo Shalom Aleinu, Ve'akulam.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.